Start with a flea flicker to open up the night. And he connects with Galladay.
Sup, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Flea Flicker with Joey D and Timmy B. This is our super wild card recap. Welcome everybody to the episode. And Joe, we thought this was going to be a nice episode. We're just going to recap the 6 games, the Ravens winning. But earlier this afternoon, the Eagles, your Philadelphia Eagles, had to fire Doug Pederson and be the news of the NFL world for this day instead of, Lamar Jackson winning and even the Cleveland Browns winning their first playoff game. So not even going to ask you how you are, Joe. You have the floor with the firing of Doug Pederson.
Yeah, I'm devastated. I love Doug. I love what he's done for the city. I mean, this guy won us a Super Bowl just 3 years ago. I think this is, clear power play or power struggle going on behind the scenes with Howie Roseman. A lot of reports that Doug Pederson, just wanted to be somewhere he could make more decisions and be a little bit more hands-on because a lot of those decisions were not in his hands. I'm not sure how the meetings with Jeffrey Lurie went. From what I understand, the first one didn't go that well. And I think a lot of that revolved around when asked who we're bringing in next year. Like, we got to bring in an offensive coordinator for real. Who's going to be? Doug wanted to promote Press Taylor from passing game coordinator and QB's coach to offensive coordinator, which, I'm sure astounded Jeffrey Lurie, as it astounded many Eagles fans who are not very impressed or happy with what he's done and think he should actually be fired. So it was interesting that was kind of the hill that Doug Pederson was willing to die on. I'm sure it was a culmination of a bunch of things, but I'm very frustrated and disappointed. I really think that he got scapegoated for a year in which we did not. Howie Roseman did a terrible job drafting, bringing in free agents, managing the cap. We've been devastated by injuries, COVID-19. There's a whole lot of factors that went into this year. And yes, Doug was definitely part of the problem. I mean, playing Alshon Jeffrey over Travis Fulgham constantly. Jason Peters over Jordan Mailata, not running the ball to Miles Sanders enough, or rolling Carson Wentz out of the pocket. There's a lot of things he did wrong. But I mean, there's so many other things that he did well. I mean, going to the playoffs three years in a row, winning the Super Bowl. I mean, coaching Nick Foles to outduel Bill Belichick and Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. I mean, just so many good things about him. And I just think it's a terrible thing that the Eagles have done, terrible situation we now find ourselves in, because now we have the least desirable head coaching vacancy out of, I think this makes seven available spots, and it's definitely the least desirable, I would say. I would rather coach the New York Jets than the Philadelphia Eagles right now. I mean, like I said, this guy won a Super Bowl 3 years ago, and you're already firing him. I mean, we're in terrible salary cap space for 2021. We have a QB controversy. This roster is old and expensive already. This is a bad situation for any head coach to come in. The way that Jeffrey Lurie kind of talked in his press conference today has some people thinking that he might already have his sights set on someone and might already have him in hand essentially, and already, just have a, not a real offer on the table yet, but it's there, and it's interesting because that's, the question, like, who's going to come in, and or if you're going to replace Doug Pederson, how are you going to bring someone in who can be better or excite this fan base, and who's going to want to take it? So, it's interesting that, there might be someone out there who's already kind of accepted the offer. The names that I'm keeping an eye on are Arthur Smith of the Titans and Brian Dabble of the Bills. Those are the guys that Brian Dabble will be my number one offensive or head coach choice, since he's done such a good job with kind of reigniting Josh Allen's career. But a couple other names to keep an eye on that I think are a little bit more likely based on this report that, he might already have his eye on someone and a contract essentially done. Lincoln Riley of Oklahoma. There's been a lot of ties with Howie Roseman, and very close connection with him and his coaching staff. And, with Jalen Hurts here, that also, kind of adds a little bit more to that. So that's a name to keep an eye on. I'm not sure how likely it is, especially this is not a desirable spot or situation to come into. I'd be surprised if out of all of the opportunities he's had the last couple of years, this is the one he picks. But the other name to keep an eye on is, I believe, Matt Harrell, the offensive coordinator from University of Southern California. He was a
Okay.
guy that the Eagles were talking to last year about potentially being offensive coordinator, and it didn't work out. I believe that he just wanted a little bit more control than Doug Pederson was willing to give. But he was a guy that the Eagles were very clearly trying to bring in. I think Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman really liked. So now that there's an opening, he could be the guy that kind of takes that position. So I don't know what to think. I'm not happy about it. You know, this although I will say they Jeff Lurie kind of acknowledged that they knew that 2021 was going to be a rough year for them cap wise. So kind of knowing that it's already going to be a rough year, I feel like get ahead of it with Doug Peterson. I mean, if he has another bad year again
Mhm.
next year, he's just going to get fired at the end of next year. I would think. So I don't know, but a lot of stuff I just don't like going on behind the scenes in the Eagles organization right now. It just really sounds like Doug Peterson never really had as much clout or authority as a head coach he should. And at this point, there was a report that he would be relieved if he ended up leaving. So now he's saying that he's already with it. It kind of sounds like he is relieved and just moving on. And he'll have another head coaching position soon. Probably the New York Jets are one, or the we've talked about the Chargers as another. But the Jets, their GM Joe Douglas used to be with the Eagles just a few years
Mhm.
ago, and Joe and Doug have a close relationship. So that's the name to keep, or that's a spot to keep an eye on there. Um, but I'm sure he's going to go and be successful wherever else he is because he's a great guy, and that's exactly how it goes in Philadelphia. So I'll end my rant. I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed. I don't think it deserves it, and it's hard to be excited about the future right now.
Yeah, no, definitely, and I would probably say that the Texans is probably in the same position of least desirable unless they do pull off a Watson trade where they get a couple of first round picks and maybe even Tua. But peas and carrots between those two, I think Houston and Philly are probably
Yeah,
the
that's
least two
fair. That's fair.
desirable. And you said it too, with 2021 being a tough year. I think Howie needs to go as well. Maybe Lurie is saying like, "All right,
That's
Howie,
what I'm saying. But
2021 is
that's
it."
not going to
Like,
happen. That's not going to
no,
happen
but
though.
he might give him like the ultimatum, being like, "All right, 2021 is it. You're against the wall with the cap. You're getting a new head coach. Like, if we don't make the playoffs or whatever, you're gone too. So go figure it out, Howie."
But that's
Because
the thing. I don't see that as the scenario because it'll be a rookie head or it'll be a new head coach. His first year with the Eagles, and it's a year where they're already acknowledging it's going to be a down year because of the financial restrictions or situation we put ourselves in. So, I think that they're kind of seeing next year as just a transition or a rebuilding year. So the way I see it, Howie Roseman essentially has another 3 to 4 years or another head coach cycle to get this right. And if he botches this, it'll be another 3 or 4 years from now, and we'll be
Mhm.
screwed even further down the road. So I don't like this at all. I get a lot of little finger vibes from Howie Roseman because he's just stabbing people in the back left and right. Um, and it's hard to be encouraged. I mean, his drafting speaks for itself.
Mhm. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the Eagles do, and hopefully, when we do our division recap and off-season mode in a month and a half, hopefully, you guys have a head coach by then. Would be very interesting to see if it is Lincoln Riley, because that would be a very lucrative deal. I feel like it would take a lot of money for him to come to the Eagles, regardless of how desirable or not the position is, or any NFL team who is going after Lincoln Riley. Definitely a lot of money because he's living the good life in Oklahoma right
Yeah.
now. So very interesting. But now let's talk about what we're here to talk about, Joe. Super Wildcard Weekend was done. Thank you to all of our guests who sent in their picks. We'll be sending you another text at the end of this week to get your picks for the 4 games happening now this weekend. But we're starting off in Buffalo, New York, where the Bills win 27-24 against the Indianapolis Colts. everybody knew the Bills were going to win this game, except for our one guest, Trent, who is a Colts fan. Sorry, Trent, your team lost. But Bills won, closer game than we thought. Philip Rivers really stayed into it. He showed why Jacoby Brissett comes in to throw the Hail Marys at the end of the game. But Joe, I want to hear your thoughts from this first wild card game and the Bills advancing in the playoffs.
It was a really, I mean, the Colts, I feel like, did as good a job as you could have hoped in terms of
Mhm.
limiting Josh Allen and slowing down that offense. I mean, 27 points is not that much compared to what they've been doing all season. And they had an opportunity there at the end of the game, especially with that extremely controversial call that
Mhm.
ended up happening. For anyone who didn't watch it, I think it was 4th and 10. Colts receiver catches the pass, gets the first down, and falls down. He hadn't been touched. He goes stand back up and gets the ball knocked out immediately. Like, it was a split second between when his knee is off the ground and when it was down. And the Bills end up recovering it. The Colts, or the referees, end up ruling or saying that the runner was down, and they weren't even going to look at it until the Bills called a timeout. So just, and then it wasn't overturned. They said call on the field stood,
Mhm.
even though I thought it was very clear that the knee was up and the ball was out, and it should have been overturned. So the referees helped out the Colts there, but the Bills got lucky. It wasn't able to amount to anything. But kind of a stain on the NFL in that first game with an extremely controversial call that really could have
Mhm.
affected the outcome of that game. But overall, I really liked what I saw from the Colts defense. They did as good a job as you could have hoped, and had an opportunity to win the game at the end, and the refs were trying to help them too, and they just couldn't take advantage of it.
Yeah, and that's one thing too with NFL officiating and the accountability because in a lot of leagues like the NBA and even like baseball or hockey, like the commissioner will come out or somebody high up like a VP or something like that will come out like a day or two later being like, yeah, they missed this call. Like this should have been the right call, and you don't really see that in the NFL. I feel like the NFL is always trying to defend their calls, and I do love that how these former referees and even Dean Blandino to some extent like trying to like help us through the challenges. But when it's like so obvious, like a play like that, and I still have like Dean Blandino being like, "Well, the rule states blah 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 blah," I'm like, "Shut up! Just say they got it wrong. Like it's not that
Right.
hard. You can make mistakes. You can get a call wrong." But yeah, luckily it didn't affect the Bills too much because that would have been a very interesting response, especially from Bills Mafia trying to win their first playoff game in about 20, 25 years. But the Bills win. They look good. The Colts did enough. I thought it was going to be a close game, but I thought it wouldn't be like to the final thing. I said about Bills by 10 or so. But as a Ravens fan, we got the Bills coming up. We'll talk about that later in the week. What the Colts did really makes me feel good about the Ravens playing up in Buffalo too, because if the Bills won like 45-10 and playing like they have the last couple of weeks, I've been like, this is going to be a very tough matchup. But seeing that the Colts were able to contain them a little bit makes me feel a little bit better. So, Joe, we're
Yeah.
starting off Super Wild Card Weekend 1-0. I just put our guests together. So our guest went 8-1. As I said, Trent was the one. He is a Colts fan, so got to respect him going for his team. And now a game that maybe a little bit of a surprise. The Rams beating the Seahawks on the road 30-20. John Wolford got the start for the Rams. He went out immediately with a concussion and all that stuff by a hit by Jamal Adams. Again, a controversial hit, depending on your viewpoint. But again, like we've been saying the last like month and a half, what is up with this Seahawks offense? They just couldn't get it together again. Rams defense, did great. Jalen Ramsey did great despite DK Metcalf having a couple of touchdowns. Aaron Donald went out too. And at that point, I was like, okay, this is the time where the Seahawks just score like 3 touchdowns in 5 minutes when he's out. But that wasn't the case. This Rams defense came ready to play, and the Seattle team just, I don't want to say they collapsed because they kept winning games in the last month or so, but they were winning like 20-17, 14-10. But I don't know, man. What happened to the Seahawks, Joe?
I really don't get it. I mean, I think Pete Carroll came out and said they needed to run the ball more and run the ball better after the
Mhm.
game, which, I mean, to an extent, I think it's true. But you know, you gotta let Russ cook. You gotta
Mhm.
you gotta use your playmakers. you got so many people that just I just don't get it. Like, I mean, Russ had been doing so well at the beginning of the year,
Mhm.
and to go up against this Rams team, when Aaron Donald goes down, um, you know, Jordan goes down, Jared Goff is injured, Cooper Cup went down, and for nobody on Seattle able to really capitalize and take advantage. I mean, it's very discouraging for the Seahawks, especially after seeing how elite that team was at the first half of the year.
All right. Sorry for a little bit of a pause or delay. Joe had a work call, but Joe, any final thoughts from this Rams Seahawks game that you were talking about?
It's going to be interesting to see what the Rams are able to do next week, going up against the Packers. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I do not see them being able to hang with the Packers at all. I don't think this NFC West was as good as we all thought it was. I mean,
No,
the
I agree.
Seahawks, the Rams, the Cardinals, the 49ers. I think we overrated pretty much all of them kind of from the start, and had these kind of preset takes, and we're kind of sticking to them. I'm impressed that the Rams have been able to find ways to win despite all of this.
Mhm.
But I think it's going to stop next week in Green Bay when they got to go up against that bad man Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to be interesting to see what the Seahawks do in the offseason because they also have some cap issues. And my friend who is the Seahawks fan, I was like, maybe you guys need to do like a soft rebuild offensively and just say Russ, DK, Chris Carson, and, one or two linemen. I don't know their offensive line and be like, those are our 5 or 6 pieces. Everybody else is gone. We got to cut their money, whatever. So it'll definitely be interesting to see what they do because they went, 11-5, 12-4, won the division, but they seem like they need a lot of work to continue what they started in the first handful of weeks to really be a dominant team in the NFC. And now, Saturday Night Football, Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady go on the road to the Washington Football Team, the NFC East champions, and the Buccaneers win 31-23. And this was a good game. Like, the football team hung in there, which I thought the defense would do enough. Man, this Taylor Heineke guy, like he really balled out, which is kind of like what you like to see. And hopefully he can find a backup job or even compete for a starting job on a team. But I was really excited watching this game. Tampa looks good though. Tom Brady threw for 400 yards. Mike Evans was kind of in and out playing on one leg. It seemed like he was still having some good numbers. Antonio Brown was getting involved. Cameron Brate, the tight end, was wide open a lot of the time. So Joe, let's hear your thoughts on Tampa Bay winning this game with the football team.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just more concerned about that Tampa Bay defense. I mean, Taylor Heineke had a really good game, and I don't think he's that good. Like,
No.
they just like, I'm seeing a lot of football team fans being like, Heineke should be our guy next year. I'm like, what? Really? Like,
Yeah, but Eagles fan Joe is like, yeah, okay, good idea.
yeah, yeah. Well, he's no Nate Studfeld. Let me be clear. But I mean, he had a really good game, and just kind of he put a lot of it on his shoulders, and I was really impressed by him. It takes a lot as a backup, let alone a third string, or I guess fourth string QB, since
Yeah.
they did have Kyle Allen there as well, and to come in for a playoff game and play as well as he did, I put that more on that Washington. This was a game where they needed to dominate in order for them to be successful. Did they end up sacking Brady at all? I mean, I think
They did. Chase Young didn't have any sacks, but I think
I didn't
Sweat
think
had
so.
like 3 or 4. Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
really? Yeah. Well, it just seemed like a lot of the game, Brady was just kind of in rhythm, able to, neutralize that pass rush with the 3-step drops, and just get the ball out of his hands quick and, take care of it. So I definitely would have liked to see a little bit more of a dominant performance from Washington if they were gonna, have a chance to win. But props to Taylor Heineke and the rest of that
Mhm.
offense, making it competitive. That's, a valiant effort, but this is what we expected to happen with Washington, one and done, or whoever came out of the NFC.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like I was saying too, I don't think Taylor Heineke is a starting quarterback, but hey, hopefully he gets a decent contract to be somebody's backup, or maybe he goes into camp trying to compete for the number 1 spot with Washington, depending on what they do with their quarterbacks. But hopefully this game kind of solidified him as being a backup for a handful of years in the NFL. And yeah, you said it, Joe. And we'll talk about this with the Browns game. The football team never really got like that big turnover or like that huge momentum switch on some sort of sack or pick six or fumble. Like they never got like that huge momentum shifting turnover that the Browns got multiple times. And I think that's kind of what did them with this game and going up against Tom Brady, one of the best quarterbacks of all time. And with all those weapons, I mean, they did a good job. I mean, they were still in the game despite giving up 30 points. And the Saturday slate went pretty good. We went 2-1, Joe. Our guest went 3-6 with the Rams Seahawks game. 3 of them went with the Rams, and then opposite, 6 of them went with the Buccaneers. 3 went with the football team. And now we're moving to Sunday, Joe. And woo, it finally happened, baby. Lamar Jackson gets his first playoff win. Ravens beat the Titans 20-13. Derrick Henry had 40 rushing yards. That's right, only 40 rushing yards, and it feels good. I mean, it was an interesting game. It was a very tense game to watch. Not the greatest of first quarters from Lamar. That interception was a duck, absolutely. But our defense really bared down. And, yes, A.J. Brown did push off on his touchdown. Refs didn't call that, and then they called that penalty on Willie Snead, whatever. But, hey, the Ravens got the win, and it is funny. And I wish I tweeted this out, but, again, I didn't want to eat my words or anything like that. But I said, right as we went up 20-13 with about 4 minutes to go, I told my family, I was like, it would be really nice if we got an interception to seal the game and then we celebrated on their logo. And that's exactly what happened. I wish I tweeted that out for all the clout. But then we get the ball back after that interception. It was like right at the 2-minute warning. It's about 1:50 left. Titans have all 3 timeouts and we throw the ball. What the fuck were we doing? Now, granted, Hollywood was wide open and he almost caught it, but if that ball was in the air for one more second, that safety was almost right there to pick it off. So that's the Greg Roman offense that I've been talking about. And, if he caught it, would have been great. It worked. But run the ball, Joe. But yeah, and Derek Wolfe after the game, he was saying that the game plan, kind of like what I was saying. I was like, hey, Derrick Henry's going to get 120. Derek Wolfe was like, hey, we know he's going to run a lot. He was like, if we can hold him under 90 yards, then we're going to win this game. We held him to 40. And, Mike Vrabel, man, thank you for punting on 4th and 2.
Yeah.
Cowardly. Very cowardly. And the surrender index, I don't know if you saw that tweet, Joe, but it was the 100th percentile most cowardly punt of 2020 and like the 99.92nd in like the history of football, or since like 2000 or whenever this was created. But I don't know how, like, yes, Derrick Henry wasn't running the ball very well, but you're telling me you couldn't do like a read option with Tannehill, because it seems like every time there's a short yardage situation or 4th and 1 or 4th and goal from the 1, everybody goes to Derrick Henry and Tannehill walks into the end zone. You're telling me you couldn't have done that? Because I guarantee you we would have not covered it. But hey, you play to win the game in the playoffs. Mike Vrabel was playing not to lose. And, part of me does kind of see it, 1-score game. 10 minutes to go, you're probably getting the ball back. But if we went down and scored a touchdown, that's game over, more or less. But happy to win. Like I said in the preview, it's the playoffs. All you got to do is win by 1 point. We won by 1 score, and we're on to Buffalo, baby, for a very exciting matchup. Very excited for our matchup against the Bills on Saturday night. We'll talk about that later. But, Joe, what were your thoughts from this Ravens-Titans game?
Yeah, I mean, I was very impressed with, just what I saw from the Baltimore team as a whole. I mean, it wasn't really a dominant performance outside of shutting down Derrick Henry. I mean, that was lights out. I don't think I've ever seen a defense just kind of everyone come together. That whole D line was just everyone was in their gap and, playing their assignment well. Line filling, DBs coming up to make plays as well. So the entire defense really stepped up. And on that interception, they actually had A.J. Brown open. If he had looked,
I know.
Pass for A.J. Brown, because he was open. Like that would have probably been a touchdown. But I love the pick, and then I love the dancing on the field.
Same.
It right on the logo, throw it back at them. They're going to do it to you in the regular season. That's fine. Let's do it right back to them in the playoffs, and
we'll do it when it matters, baby.
Send them home. Exactly. So I was really happy to see that. I was rooting for the Ravens that game. I felt like, they came in with a chip on their shoulder, and they absolutely did, and they proved it. Lamar did a really good job of spreading the ball around. Mark Andrews had some nice catches, and Hollywood Brown finally had a really big game. I feel like this is probably his best game of the Yeah, probably his best game of the entire season, I would say. Just I know he had almost 10 catches, if not 10. I think he had over 100 yards on touchdown, but he was very productive and just seemed to always find a soft spot and always be open. So,
Mhm.
that'll be kind of the key matchup moving forward. I mean, he's so electric with the ball in his hands. Like he was doing a lot with screens and short passes and making a lot of good plays. So, if they can kind of keep this horizontal passing attack and vertical running game going, I think it's really gonna help them slow down that Bills team and just kind of keep the ball out of Josh Allen's hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk about that more in our preview for this weekend. But also the like pass chart for the Ravens, it was every single pass was outside of the numbers. There was nothing right up the middle, which is normally where we like to throw the football. So
Mhm.
that was nice. And Hollywood Brown, even last year in the playoff game against the Titans, he had a couple of nice catches and he had some stats. Despite it was garbage time and we threw like
Yeah.
60 times. So obviously the numbers will add up, but he still, even in that playoff game, had about 6, 7 catches for 100 yards and so as well. But yeah, very excited. And, we're moving on to Buffalo. And now the Nickelodeon game, Joe, the Nickelodeon game. Now, let me ask you the Saints won 21-9 against the Bears. We all went with the Saints, even our guest did. Guest went 9-0. And this brings us to 4-1. Did you watch the game on Nickelodeon?
I did. I did. It
Yeah,
was it
so
was
did I.
fun to
Good,
watch.
good,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm watching 6 games of football on ESPN, ABC, CBS, whatever. Like, let me get some Nickelodeon in there. It was fun. I liked what Nate Burleson was doing, just kind of explaining
Yeah.
everything, the basics to kids. I think it's important to have a broadcast like that for kids and young viewers who just are learning what the game is. I mean, kids who are young are watching Nickelodeon, like less than 10 years old, and I feel like it's hard to watch a real football game without mental capacity to process what people are saying, on Fox and NBC and whatnot. I liked how he dumbed it down for the audience and but still made it easy to follow and easy to watch. And the way he explained it wasn't too demeaning or slow or whatever. I thought they did a really good job, and it was fun. I mean, if it was a better game, then a little bit better, but they did a good job with the. I love the image of who is it? Drew Brees and Michael Thomas, I think, as best friends, and then SpongeBob and
Oh, no, it was,
Patrick.
it was Drew Brees and Taysom
And then
Hill.
oh, that's right. Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. And then they also
Leaders
and
of
then
the
they also
offense.
showed and they also showed when in the last game when who is it? The Bears receiver punched Chauncey Gardner Johnson in the face,
Yeah.
and they had it next to like another thing, like where SpongeBob did that. I thought that was hilarious, and a really good job, and something that I think they should try to make more of an effort to incorporate into future seasons. But it was a good
Yeah.
game
And
overall,
yeah.
in addition to
And
Nickelodeon.
yeah, and it was cool too because and one of my podcasts was talking about this today was like this game was not only meant for kids but it was kind of meant for like people our age too, and maybe for people in our generation who also have young kids trying to teach the game of football. And my one of my things that I think that they did really well was they weren't trying to promote any of like their new shows except for like the couple of like kid reporters. But anytime they were talking about their favorite Nick TV shows, it was always like the shows that we grew up on. And yeah, like SpongeBob and maybe like Fairly Odd Parents like still
Mhm.
kind of exist and have new episodes, but they were like, remember Hey Arnold, like remember Rugrats, remember like Jimmy Neutron. So like they were like kind of adhering
Yep.
to like people our age too. And like, you know, and obviously when they asked the players their favorite shows, it was all from like 90s and early 2000s because that's what they grew up on. So I'm kind of glad that they weren't like, all right, now let's go meet this other character from this show that like nobody knows exists that's over the
Right.
age of 10. Like, so I'm glad they did that. Wish the team scored a little bit more for the slime zone. And, if only it was the night game when there was like 12 touchdowns.
Right.
But yeah, for the game, it's that's kind of what I expected. I thought the Bears would cover, and it was 10-10.5. If they had kicked that extra point or gone for two, that they would have covered. So they were right there. But the Saints still a little worrying. But who knows? They might have gone into it being like, we're playing the Bears. So let's just score 20 points and we're winning this game. So it'll be interesting to see Brady versus Breeze for a third time this season. It's very hard to beat a team 3 times in one season, Joe. We'll talk about that later. And then the night game, the Cleveland Browns. Uh, the Cleveland Browns in 2020, 2021 won win a playoff game. They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers by a score of 48-37. Joe, some people were predicting that the Browns would win. Two of our guests did. Some people on the pregame shows on ESPN and everything. Handful of people picked the Browns, but I think they'd all be lying if they thought that that's how this game would go, with a first play, bad snap, touchdown, 28-0 at the end of the first quarter. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, Joe?
I mean, I think that was just everyone was just kind of shocked from the beginning, and it just never changed. Oh wow, notification. Dan Quinn is Cowboys' new defensive
I saw that, yeah.
coordinator. Well, there's one defensive coordinator off the table for the Eagles. That's great. So sorry, where were we? Oh yeah, the Browns. Yeah, they get that fumble. Everyone's just shocked, like, oh wow, like that's
Right.
pretty good. Like, okay, like Cleveland's up 7-0 off the bat, like that, helps tremendously. And then they was it an interception right away, or an interception on their next drive?
The Steelers had like a couple of first downs. They got to midfield and then they threw an interception. So yeah, I mean, they got that interception. They scored in like 5-6 plays, and then all of a sudden it's 14-0.
Yeah.
Then another it just kept building up. And that first quarter, the Steelers looked like that they just weren't there. And they looked like a deer in the headlights too. That was my thing.
Like I said, that exactly. That feeling of shock just like never went away throughout that whole first quarter, because it just kept happening. It's like, is this real? Is this really happening? Like, I could not believe it. So, I mean, props to the Browns coming out there without their head coach, without their starting corners and a wide receiver, and in there into Pittsburgh after nobody on that team has playoff experience. Team that rested all your starters against them last week and they almost won, and now you're playing their full squad and you're not at full strength and you blow them out like this.
Yeah.
Like, wow. I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, the Steelers just they were talking a lot of smack about the Browns going into this game. Juju, Chase Claypool, just they're the Browns, like they're gonna Brown Eric Ebron, like everybody.
Well, did you hear what Chase Claypool said today?
Steelers. I did. That they're gonna get flat streak.
Yeah, dude, just take the L.
City?
Just take the L.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. All you're doing is just making yourself look worse. So, like, don't be a sore loser. Like, y'all lost. Y'all got worked. Y'all didn't come to play. On to 2021, baby. So, it's crazy. The Steelers were 11-0 at one point, right?
They were, and like Joe, when they were 8-0, 9-0, 10-0, I kept saying, I'm like, they're winning these games, but they are not like a 2007 Patriots or even like a Cam Newton, MVP season. I was like, this team could have a day of reckoning, and unfortunately, it happened at the end of the year. It sucks to see that, but as a Ravens fan, it's always a good day when the Ravens win and the Steelers lose. Even better when it's the playoffs. And this is the third straight year the Steelers have had some sort of collapse. In 2018. Juju Smith-Schuster fumbled against the Saints in a game in December that, gave us the tiebreaker over them to win the division. Last year, they kind of fell apart in November and December, and again this year. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the offseason, because they have some decisions to make, whether Ben Roethlisberger's cap number is $41 million. If you're smart, you say, thank you for your time. Thank you for the 15, 20 years, Ben. Have a good day. So they do have a bunch of decisions to make, and they did almost come back. I mean, they were in it. They made it to a 10 to 15 point game, and luckily the Browns were able to score another touchdown or at least another field goal to kind of prevent a full comeback. But that's going to happen when you throw 60 times, and with the weapons of Claypool, Juju, even Ebron was catching the ball this game. But yeah, the Steelers need a lot of work, and so do the Browns. That you got to celebrate this win, but you're trying to dethrone the champs now. after having a bye with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, I mean, that's going to be a tough test no matter who was, even if the Ravens were going up against it. It's going to be a very exciting game. But yeah, you know, with Chase Claypool, dude, just take the L, dude. Like, I know you're
Yeah.
upset, and will the Browns probably get clapped? Probably, yes, probably. But don't be like, oh, well, whatever, they're gonna get clapped. It was just be like, hey, man, like, just wasn't our game. And that's sometimes how it happens in the playoffs. With it's only one game, you only got one opportunity to make it count, and the Steelers didn't. So I wish I could enjoy this game a little bit more. Hating the Steelers, but it's kind of like it's the Browns. Like, if this was any other, like, if this was like the Titans or even the Patriots, I'd be like, ha 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 ha, ha Steelers.
See, I feel like it's worse for the Steelers because it's the Browns because they're so bad. Like, and now they're not, and this is like the team that they, kind of announced them. Like, this is a resounding win. The Browns. I mean, a lot of people talked about the Browns being kind of frauds this year, and not be able to win those big games. And like they got blown out by the Steelers the first time they played. They barely beat them, with their backups this time. Now the Browns are down a lot of people, and the Steelers are at full force. They're at home in the playoffs, and this is the game where the Browns dominate. So I think it's a wake up call to the NFL. Cleveland is here. I mean, Kevin Stefanski, like, how can you not love this guy and what he's done for
Mhm.
that culture in Cleveland? I mean, it's unbelievable, and just something to be very proud of as a first year head coach with the Cleveland Browns, and to just redefine that culture. Year one, it really speaks to the man and coach that he is. So props to him, especially having to watch the game like a regular fan, just in his
Yeah.
basement by himself with his phone off.
Yeah, and he was saying too that his TV was on like a 45-second delay. So he was like, I knew something good was happening on the first play because like his kids and stuff were like jumping up and down, and he could hear his like family celebrate upstairs where their TV was about a minute faster. So he was like, I knew it was all coming. I just didn't know what was coming. Um, which is always a lot of fun. But yeah, it's definitely a wake up call. And I mean, honestly, if you look at the final four teams in the AFC, the Chiefs, Bills, Ravens, and Browns, those are probably the four best teams in the AFC, at least in the last month 5 6 weeks. I mean, they're the four teams that have been playing the best football in the conference. So it should be an interesting game. I mean, and we'll talk about this on Sunday, but yeah, definitely a wake up call. And for the Browns, it's like also common sense. Like you were saying, how Stefanski's changed everything. It's like, oh, I got Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and a quarterback who's very good with play action. Why don't we set up the run and do play action? It's like, duh.
Yeah,
um, so
shocker.
so glad they figured out. It's going to be a lot of fun too. And I know with the comparisons of like Baker and Lamar and maybe even Joe Burrow now, like we got a nice young group of quarterbacks here in the division. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see year in and year out who's going to be battling for that wild card, the division championship, and we'll see. The Steelers are always going to be there, so we'll see what they do. But Joe, that's going to wrap it up for the wild card weekend, super wild card weekend, excuse me. But we both went 4-2. Our guest did very well as well. Any final words on the first super wildcard weekend in the NFL?
I wish I could appreciate it more right now, but right now I am only devastated. Who did the best out of our guests?
I could find that out and let everybody know, but I just said like, okay, 6 of our guests picked this team. Probably I want to say Fab. He actually sent me a full bracket, so let me pull it up. He did pick the Browns. So Fab, he got Cleveland, Buffalo, Rams. He picked he picked the Titans and the football team. So he didn't do the best. But
What an
there's definitely
idiot!
I know. But hey, he also predicted that Miles Garrett would get a touchdown, and he was the first person to the ball on that first snap. He just wasn't the guy who recovered it, so he was kind of right. And he texted me
Yeah,
too.
almost.
Um, on the Saints' second touchdown, he was like, "I really thought Taysom Hill threw that football." So his predictions almost came true. But yeah, I don't know which guest did the best, but definitely we got 4 games this week, so definitely looking forward to seeing who everybody's picking. We'll see who's picking the Bills and who's picking the Ravens. But we got 4 great games this weekend, so excited to pick that. But Joe, leave it off to you. Any final words again?
That's all I got, Tim. I told you, I'm only devastated right now. Only devastated.
All right, Joe. Well, hey, you go research some potential coach candidates and defensive coordinator candidates. I'll do some film study on the Bills for my Ravens. But everybody, have a great a week of non-football. But there are some other sports happening right now. College football championship is tonight. Well, I guess last night when this will be out for you guys. So, oh well. But we will see you back later in the week on Friday or Saturday for our picks for the divisional round, the Elite Eight of football. Guys, everybody have a great day, and we will see you soon.